in. My name is Dawn Sev, and this is the Rock and Roll Book Club for Tuesday, the 15th of March, 2022. A couple of things to start off with. I want to give a big shout out to my friend Scott, who's watching this from Madrid, Spain. Happy birthday, Scott. Someday we will stop inundating you with the Ides of March memes for your birthday, but this year's not it. So I hope you really enjoyed the ones that we gave you this year. Just a quick housekeeping note as well. I am glad to say the website is now live. If you go to Dawn Sev, I don't know if you can see that there. Probably can't see that in the web browser there, but just to let you know that the website is now live, including, if I may be so bold as to point out, the list, the sign up for the mailing list, which is where I'll be doing all the newsletters and sending out information about the new single releases that are coming up the next couple of months, information about shows, just cool stuff that is coming up that I really would like to share for you. And I want to say thank you very much to the inaugural members who took part and signed up for it. I hope you got it. If you didn't get it, send me an email, let me know, and I'll make sure that you get it. So here we are, third Tuesday of the month, 15th of March. Book club this week is, and of course I don't have it right at hand, a natural complement to the Lisa Robinson book we looked at a couple of weeks ago. This one's called I'm Not With the Band. Written by NME and former Smash Hits journalist Sylvia Patterson. This is an interesting contrast to the Lisa Robinson book that we had for a number of reasons. First of all, this is a book for those of you who love Britpop and love bands like Blur and the Charlatans, and even like to reach a little further back into things like Led Zeppelin. This is a really interesting book, and it is unabashedly gossipy. So, like Lisa Robinson, Sylvia Patterson goes back into her files and her audio and goes back and resuscitates and redoes a whole bunch of, relooks at a whole bunch of interviews that she's conducted in the past. But the one thing that she does that Lisa Robinson did not do is she is unabashedly honest about what her role was as a rock and roll journalist at the time. Now, to give you a bit of context about the publications that she worked with, the first publication in rock, the first music publication that she worked with was called Smash Hits, and at the time it wasn't taken totally seriously as a music, publication. It published about music, and it was about, bands and stuff like that. But it had a very unique, very British sense of humor, and it embraced that sense of humor, and you either got it or you didn't. It was very much like, this is a really, really bad analogy, but it was almost like you love a Bugs Bunny cartoon because it's a Bugs Bunny cartoon, right? Bugs Bunny has a certain archness with using Wagner and opera and stuff like that, but it's slapstick as well. It makes no bones about the fact that it's not really high culture. And Smash Hits in its day was very much like that as well. It was funny. It had its in-jokes. It had its fictional characters who were not always very kind to the people who they portrayed. So you were either in on the joke or you weren't. And the second big publication that's mentioned in here is the New Musical Expresses, which is basically the Bible for music, or was back in the day, the Bible for music, and especially new music. It came out every Thursday, every Wednesday, every Thursday. Can't remember now. This is how old I am. And it was what everybody bought. It came out. That was the first thing you bought. Went out, left home to go to the office or go to work. You bought the NME because it would always have the greatest gig listings about who was playing what playing where in the UK. And it was the publication that had its finger on the pulse and knew exactly what was going on. Part of, let me say it this way. It is a truth universally acknowledged, but not necessarily universally lived, that journalists should not be part of the story. Journalists shouldn't always be, in there and reporting on themselves and putting themselves into the mix of the story. The story should be just about the subject, and that's that. And the nice thing about the New Musical Express and its cohort publication, The Melody Maker, is that they didn't always live by that rule. So you would have publications, you would see stories published about people getting leg staggeringly drunk with their favorite people, or maybe they'd be riding a train or something like that. So there was always that sense of putting yourself in the story as a character going along with these people and contextualizing who they were and what they did. And that's a refreshing thing that I love about the Sylvia Patterson book, is like Liz Phair before her in horror stories, Sylvia Patterson doesn't make excuses for her bad behavior. There's drinking, there are drugs, there are bad boyfriends, there are questionable decisions, there's a kind of fractured family history that goes into it. And she doesn't put a gloss on any of that. She just is like, look, this is it, what it is. And it's refreshing to read, especially if you love gossip. This is a really, not only if you love Britpop, but if you love gossipy stories about your favorite musicians or what was going on in the music scene at that point in time, and the bad behavior at certain award shows, this is a really good book about it. And it's a good book because it's an honest book. It's one person calling it as she saw it, as she lived the experience at that point in time. The nice thing about it too is that you're not really stuck in one story or one theme for a very long period of time either. Where Lisa Robinson's book was very much set up on, here are women artists talking about fame, here are women artists talking about sex, here are women artists talking about money. It's like, oh, here's our little chapterette on Blur. Here's our little chapterette on interviewing Robert Plant. Here's our little chapterette about the time, with the Charlatans, where she goes out to dinner with Tim Burgess, and he ends up taking a header down the stairs of a restaurant in Soho in London. And it's very snippety like that. So if there's something you don't like or something that doesn't really appeal to you, it's not a great loss. You skip ahead 5 pages and then you're in on the next section. It's quite dense. And this is appropriate for somebody who's spent so much time in the industry. Even though it is snippety, it's dense. It does talk about the whole trajectory about what fame meant way back when she was starting to write in the early 1980s to what it means now. What does fame mean in an era where the gatekeepers are down? We don't have the same gatekeepers in the press and the record companies and the media companies that we had before, but that means that stars are more exposed than ever to abuse from their fans, from not being able to interact on a one-to-one person basis because you don't have that filter that can pull out the people who aren't appropriate for you, who don't get what you do. Now, because of publishing laws, which, I can leave you to Google that. I'm not going to get into that now. This is not a book that's widely available in Canada. Sorry about that. That's the next lot of books coming through. It's not a book that's widely available in Canada, but it really is a wonderful read because she never, if nothing else, it's refreshing because she never loses that fangirl bit. She's always got you can always read the butterflies in her stomach, the excitement as she realizes she's like, oh my God, I'm going to meet so-and-so. Oh my God, I'm going to go fly to Los Angeles and hang out with New Order. Like that sort of smile, that sort of, excitement about the job that she does. She never loses that throughout the stories that she tells, which is not to say it's a universal Pollyanna story. There are points where she talks about very, very painful things in her life and very, very painful observations about what's happened in the music industry. But if you want a story that's written from a fan's viewpoint, from what it's like to be a fan starting in, and just always having access to that sort of like golden world that a lot of us think we never get access to, this is a really, really enjoyable book to read. Anyway, I'm trying to keep this shorter because I don't want to ramble like I have been doing in the past editions. So again, that's Sylvia Patterson's I'm Not With the Band, A Life in Music, published by, I should have noticed this before, Sphere Books out of the UK, which is an imprint of Little Brown UK. So coming up in the next couple of editions of Rock and Roll Book Club, we are going to have Michelle Zonder's Crying in H Mart, the memoir of what it was like to be a musician, to come up as a musician with a very traditional mother who didn't quite always get what she was trying for and what she wanted to do, and what happens when that relationship comes apart when her mother dies. So that's April 5th. April 19th, we are going to have the classic, and I'm sorry, I'm getting the book right now because I never get the title straight, and I apologize. The Mallartines, close, 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 music, 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 boys, boys, boys. considered one of the canons of music memoirs. I guess April's turning out to be music memoir month, for lack of a better term. I mean, everybody's got memoirs because we're also going to have Tom Wilson's Beautiful Scars on May 3rd, excuse me. May is going to definitely be Hamilton month in celebration of the 65th birthday, at least I think it's 65. It's not, sorry, Gordy, of Gord Lewis of Teenage Head, one of these seminal bands of Canadian rock and roll. Basically, the godfathers to so many bands who started in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. But in the meantime, we've got Viv Albertine, who played in the legendary British punk band The Slits, and a very honest, brutal, I don't want to say brutal, I always think it sounds like people getting into fistfights or something, but a very honest, very direct memoir of what it was like to be a woman when punk started becoming a thing in the UK, what it was like to be on the front lines of a movement that in the beginning was very gender neutral, which was very accepting of all. And then as time went on, these little splinters started happening in the scenes, and things started happening, and they weren't always great, and they especially weren't always great for female musicians. So again, Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zonder on April 5th. April 19th, Close, 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 Music, 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 Boys, Boys, Boys by Viv Albertine. And May 3rd, Beautiful Scars by Tom Wilson of Junk House and Lee Harvey Osmond. So again, please support your independent bookstore if you choose to buy them. If you don't want to buy them and you live in Ontario, don't forget to check out interlibrary loan with your local public library, because if your public library doesn't have the book, odds are that they'll be able to hook up with some other library that does and get you the book on loan. So that's it for Rock and Roll Book Club for today, March 15th, 2022. Look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks from Michelle Zonder. Read on, rock on, stay safe, and be optimistic, because like Octavio Paz said, you can be optimistic or you can be pessimistic. The amount of work involved is exactly the same. Take care and have a good one.